Hey everybody. So yesterday I made the animations time based as opposed to refresh based. Um, I think I'm getting better at those words anyways, and that's kind of the point. And that was in yesterday's video. And then last night I coded the ability to control whether it's looping and the amount of time that an animation is looping. So basically now I can add that in there. Now did want to notice that note, and then I can turn looping off, so it just goes on forever. And then I could take animations and turn them off. Um, and I did want to note that uh, there's all these features, right? Like the way the shadowing works and all that, and the way this code was architected, we don't have to write everything's segregated so that we don't have to write code to now make shadowing work with animations. There is a way that you can couple all these sort of features together, and you end up with a huge mess where every time you want to add something, oh, I'm going to have animations, but it only works for it only works for basics without shadows, and that sort of coding that is really results in what's called spaghetti code, and it's just a real mess. Um, but anyways, I did want to note that, um, and this is nice because we don't have, because we don't have like all this back work to do every time I make any changes. So, anyways, I think that was the main thing yesterday. Now it did kick off a huge I mean, like huge in the fact that it is complete refactor of an entire area, but fortunately that area was very small. So there was a whole new file called animation interfaces that has three things in it: a running, which basically that's ties to this checkbox; a looping, which ties to this checkbox; and a time, which ties to this. So as you can tell, the rotating is not tied to our new code change, and the X changes along X, Y, and Z axis are. So if I change this to 1, now it just loops, and and then I can go into my mesh, and I could say, oh, I want to update my sphere, and I want to turn its color to, let's say, pure yellow, and it just all happens, and that's super nice. Um, but according to Google, when I did a search, white goes best with green, RGB green. So I'm going to go back to that. Um, and then I'm going to set this back to 0, and we can see that. And I think that's coolio. So to go over the code, first things first, animation interface. Now, if you look at the next thing, I think, kind of going from the architecturally from the top down is, well, I always have to note that I moved it, how easy it was to move animations to the front because that's where I knew most of this video would be happening. So for convenience, and then so in the 3JS service, uh, basically, let's see, let's look at it this way. In the 3JS service, I brought in the animation, imported the animation interface, and then I created a new animation item. I just went with the same naming convention that like a camera item and a renderer item. And that's what happens, right? Like at first we had like kind of different naming conventions and stuff, but with time, everything's starting to kind of settle into a same naming convention. And this is kind of what you want to see happen on a team. You want everyone to suddenly start to use the same naming conventions without being like sort of dictated to. Like they just naturally start to emulate each other. And if they don't, that's a very good sign that your teams are way too siloed. Um, but anyways, so we got our animation interface, and we set it the default to looping is true, that running is true, and the time is 3 seconds. So this is the default time of a 3 second loop, and that's cool. I love it. Um, and So now let's come down here. And so back in the day when we first set this up, or when I first set this up, our animation signal. I don't know why it's not really showing. Oh yeah, so the animation signal was just a Boolean, true or false, and it was just tied to this animation checkbox. And now it's this whole object. And all that works simple. I mean, it was just simple because this is exactly how everything else works. And, we've already gone down that path. So, we got to benefit from that. So basically, there was something called animation, update animation, which basically just took the Boolean and would just change what the signal sent out, published. And now it takes the whole animation object and it all works. It all works. Nobody would have, like a new developer could learn as little or as much as they wanted to in the implementation of that. Um, so I changed the name of current time to current loop time just so it'd be more uh, um, descriptive. So like the clock.get elapsed time is the amount of time that is passed in the current loop. Um, Deleted all this code that was just commented out anyway, so it really made no change. And then I basically said if it's currently looping and the current loop time is greater than the animation time. So if I said it's going to be 3 seconds and the current loop time is more than 3 seconds, then reset the clock, and that is what causes this rotation. So basically it goes back to 0. And then I say if animation time is running, that used to be just a Boolean. Let's see if we can see. So it used to be if this animation value. So it was asking the signal, hey, if the value is 0, and I just made that the state variable or the service variable. Like over there, they're called component variables. So yeah, the service variable. Oh no, component attribute. So the service attribute of running is true. Then go ahead and run through this. This is the non-controlled rotation. So when I set this to 0, it just continues to rotate because it doesn't care about the time. And then I have this update mesh for time, and I send it the elapsed time and the mesh that it needs to update. So basically, this thing is starting to turn into this service is starting to turn into a monstrosity. To me, once you pass 500 lines, it's time to take a serious look. Once you hit 1,000 lines, it's time to hit the emergency brake. There's obviously exceptions to that rule. I mean, that's just my general guidelines that I run by. So, and one of the nice things about the way this is set up is, one, it's super easy to unit test. Like you can give it a mesh and give it a time, and then check to see if it does what you expect it to do. This X speed and Y speed, all this stuff is definitely going to be more configured. Not, this is just for now. And so I'll probably also pass in the mesh, or maybe, yeah. So that would make a lot more sense. Actually, I probably should have passed in the mesh item, and then this thing would be nice in what they call pure, and I would be able to unit test it very easily. So that'll probably be the first thing I do after I get off this video, is convert this to where it sends the mesh from outside. The other thing is, so for unit testing, that's really the secondary thing. The primary thing is I'm going to start splitting these things out, right? We're right on the precipice of 500 lines. And so this update mesh for item is going to be in an animation service. And it's going to be animation update mesh for item, which is way, way more readable. And also, we will know it's only about animations. And that's going to be very easy to pull out if I don't have this reference to this state service attribute. Instead, I pass in the value, and then and that'll be that. Let's see. Let me go over this real quick. I already did that. So basically, all this is HTML. I added to only create this stuff if the HTML exists, if the animation exists, and then let's see. I added a bit of margin and height to this looping div because, let me hit pause on this, because without that, let me show you what happens. If we don't have this, okay, so actually, let me take a step back. So in this div, up in here, let's see, where are you? We have a looping class. And if we don't set this height, if we don't hard code this height to a specific amount, it starts moving around, because when you click this, see that it goes away, that goes away, and then that comes back. So if I get rid of this code, so let me just comment it out, save. What you get is, that's weird that it didn't, okay, yeah, rebuilt. See, you get this little motion. That is emotionally jarring for the user and for designers and people like that. They get like truly triggered by that. So you don't want that. You don't want things moving around when you click. It's the kind of thing I don't even like. I actually had to train myself to even notice things like that. But other people definitely notice, and it really affects them. And then in the TypeScript, there really wasn't much. I created, this is basically a carbon copy of the way all the other managers work. Create an object that's of the same, this animation interface. And just a quick note, this actually, well, here, so this ends up being a reference to the exact same animation object that's up in the service. So I'm just going to say that, and I'm just going to always say that. I'm just going to keep saying that because at one point, any developer who's watching this, and if they don't quite understand the way that memory is allocated in JavaScript, one day it's going to click for you, and it's going to be a life changer for you as a developer, because you're going to be like, you're literally going to go into places that have had bugs for 3 years or 4 years, and no one had any idea what was broken, and you're just going to fix it. And yeah, that might work out well for you, or maybe not. I don't know. But it's going to make your life a lot more pleasant. I'll tell you that right now. This is an existing update animation, basically just a pure refactor to use the new object instead of using, I used to just pass in I would just use the value as opposed to where I would just pass checked or unchecked to the service. Now we have to pass the whole object. We update the object, and then if it was checked, we restart the animation. If it wasn't checked, we leave the animation where it's at. That was just so that I could kind of see it floating out there. It's not going to matter, because hopefully today I'll get a little a little slider in here where you can say, oh, show me 2 seconds, show me 2.1 seconds, show me 1. So we'll be able to slide around and see where it is in the animation sequence. So I added something to update the animation looping, and another thing, and basically all it does is turn looping on and off. It basically updates our shared component attribute, and it updates that and then passes it along to the update animation and restarts the animation. And then the update loop time is the same exact pattern. Just updates the time. We do this forced conversion to a coercion. We coerce it into a number by multiplying the time. Like I said, you may have to do this in a more sort of formal way in some environments. In some environments they like this. Some environments they have like a sort of a shared utility function that converts strings and stuff to numbers. Whatever. And then check to see if it's a number. If they type in, like, let me add a mesh. If they type in like an A or something in here, just set it to 0. That'll work for now. Who knows? In the future, there may be some other things that we have to do in there. I would definitely not disable the ability to type in letters, because who knows, we may want letters in there in the future. And it's just easy enough to just fix it And like I said, this will be good enough for now. If you do lock it down so that they can't, like what you could do is you could say on key down, because basically right now what happens is on the key up, I update the loop sign. You could add like a key down event, and in there, if it's anything other than number, just ignore it, like cancel the update, because key down happens before the value is. If you play around with it, you'll figure it out. I clearly haven't given you enough information to actually implement it, but I have given you enough information to figure it out. I went 5 minutes over. Sorry about that, guys. Happy coding. Bye.